never thought I would get so excited about a memory card, and yet here we are. It's safe to say the team over at 8-Bit Mods has completely redefined the way we think about these devices. Their MemCard Pro line of products have given us near unlimited storage for the PS1, PS2, and GameCube, along with smart features that keep our save data organized and easily accessible. And now they're taking things even further with their latest MemCard Pro entry, the VMU Pro for the Sega Dreamcast. This is their boldest vision yet for a memory card, creating the VMU we've always dreamed of. So let's dive in and take a closer look at this incredible new memory card and emulation handheld. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to another episode of Retro Renew. Today I am super excited because I get to give you an exclusive first look at the latest MemCard Pro from the folks over at 8-Bit Mods. This time they're tackling arguably the coolest memory card ever created, the VMU for the Sega Dreamcast. Now, as a kid who grew up with the Dreamcast, I was just as excited with the memory card as I was with the console itself, and basically because it looked like a mini handheld. Sega called these visual memory units, or VMU for short, and what made these so unique was that in addition to storing your save files, it doubled as a sort of mini console. Launch titles like Sonic Adventure really showed off what it could do, with a mini game called Chow Adventure allowing you to basically raise a baby Chow much like you would a Tamagotchi. Given its mini Game Boy-like form factor, I think a lot of us had hoped for a more immersive gaming experience, but given the resolution of the screen and the lack of processing power, the VMU ended up being more of a gimmick than an actual gaming device. That brings me to the VMU Pro. While it retains all the features we've come to expect from a MemCard Pro device, like unlimited storage, game-specific VMC creation, Wi-Fi capability, and the WebUI interface, the folks over at 8-Bit Mods have elevated things to the next level. Taking advantage of the unique VMU form factor, 8-Bit Mods has basically created the VMU we've always wanted, featuring on-device save data management, and what I'm personally most excited about, retro video game emulation, amongst many other features that we'll be diving into here in a minute. Okay, so in this video, we'll cover the external features of the VMU Pro, go over its initial setup process, take a close look at its software features to include the video game emulation, do a live demo of it in action, and also discuss the future of the device, which has some pretty exciting things to look forward to. Feel free to skip around the video to the sections that most interest you, as I left some timestamps down below in the description. Now to start off, I actually have to preface that the VMU Pro that 8-Bit Mods sent over is a pre-production unit. The board, shell, and software are still very much in the works, so we'll likely see a lot of this change to some degree when the final version is released later this year. Now, I will be following the progress of the VMU Pro development very closely, and we'll do an update video once we get closer to its release, so make sure you stay in the loop by subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Anyway, the first topic I want to cover is a quick tour around the device, starting with the shell. And as with all MemCard Pro devices, this thing was designed by Greg of Laser Bear Industries. It's injection molded and will come in a variety of colors, some of which I have here. Again, these are pre-production shells, so the actual final color might be slightly tweaked to better match the original colors that Sega offered back in the day. Now, when comparing the Pro to the original VMU, we can see that they're pretty similar. However, upon closer inspection, they couldn't be any more different. First, you'll notice that it's a bit taller. When installed in the controller, it does stick out just a bit on top. Taking a look at the bottom, we have the USB-C port. This will be the primary method of charging the VMU. Using this port, we'll charge the battery at a rate of roughly 500 mAh, giving us a full charge from dead in about 1.5 hours. And speaking of the battery, it has a 720 mAh capacity, which is plenty for a device this small. When powered on continuously, it should last about 10 hours, according to 8-Bit Mods. However, when you put it into sleep mode, it can supposedly last anywhere between 1 and 2 months, which is quite impressive. I haven't personally tested the unit, but this is according to the calculations done by 8-Bit Mods, so we'll have to take it with a grain of salt for now until I can run tests a bit later. On either side of the USB-C port, we have some buttons. These will allow us to do various operations while the VMU Pro is plugged into the controller, such as changing the VMC channel on the fly. Taking a look at the unit head-on, we can see that they included all the original buttons on the face of the VMU Pro. We have the D-pad, sleep and mode buttons, as well as the A and B buttons. There's one more button here on the left side for powering the VMU on, with the SD card slot here on the other side. Popping the top cap off, and we're greeted with the proprietary VMU connector. This was completely reverse engineered from the ground up by 8-bit mods, and this alone took a tremendous amount of work and resources to get just right, as this is a completely unique connector that only exists on the VMU. And I have to say they really pulled it off, as connecting it to the controller or another VMU feels pretty much perfect. Also, what's really neat is that they actually allowed it to be charged when it's plugged into the controller, albeit at a much slower rate of about 100 milliamp hours, but that's certainly better than nothing. And taking a look around back, we have the speaker grills. This thing can actually get pretty loud and is a major upgrade to the original VMU's simple piezo speaker. Now, the centerpiece of the VMU Pro is of course the screen. It's a TFT display with a resolution of 240 by 240, and it supports 16-bit color. While this doesn't sound impressive on paper, in person it looks really nice and does the job more than adequately. Because of its size, everything looks super sharp, and gaming on it, which is something I'll get into a bit later, looks absolutely fantastic. Alright, so that's the VMU Pro's exterior. Now let's take a quick look at the internals. The shell is only held on with 4 screws at each of the 4 corners, and when removed we can flip the bottom shell off. Inside, we immediately see the large 720 mAh battery, as well as a speaker which is connected to the rear shell. Moving the battery out of the way, and we can see the entire motherboard. Now, I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail here, but we can see that the unit is powered by an ESP32, which also gives us Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capability, very much like the other MemCard Pro devices. Over here, we have some of the power management circuitry, which I'm told are some of the most expensive components in the bill of material. But it is why the battery life on this lasts as long as it does, so I think it's money well spent. I also really like that the battery is easily replaceable, as it uses a JST connector rather than being directly soldered to the board. So swapping in a new battery when this one starts to degrade will be a pretty simple process. These are things most people really won't notice, but I think it's these thoughtful design features that really adds to the overall quality of the device. Now, before we jump into how to initially set up the VMU Pro, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. If you have an idea for a new mod or want to assemble an open source project, PCBWay provides you with the tools to make them a reality. From 3D printing services in an array of materials, all the way to other services like CNC machining, injection molding, and of course PCB and flex ribbon fabrication. So when it comes to taking your retro mods to the next level, PCBWay is the place to make that happen. Check out the link in the description for PCBWay to get $5 off your first order. And again, a huge thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Alright, now that we've taken a quick tour of the hardware and design, let's check out what the initial setup process looks like. Now, it's surprisingly straightforward, especially when compared to earlier MemCard Pro devices, which often required a separate device to get them connected to Wi-Fi. Thanks to the VMU Pro's built-in screen and its full set of buttons, everything can be done directly on the unit itself without the need of an external device like your cell phone or computer. So when you power on the device for the first time, you are greeted to a nice welcome screen. Pressing A will take you to the next screen, which allows you to set your time zone. I'm on the East Coast here of the United States, so after selecting that, it'll start to scan for your local Wi-Fi networks. Select the one you want to connect to, and then enter the password using the on-screen keyboard. Once entered, toggle to the next arrow and press the A button, and then press A again. Once you've successfully connected to your home network, press A to go to the next screen. Here, you'll be prompted to update the firmware to the latest version, but mine is already up to date, so pressing A for the last time will then bring you to the VMU Pro's home screen. Now we're basically able to use the device, which brings me to the features. So real quick here on the home screen, if we take a look at the top, it gives us some information like the time, battery level, the Wi-Fi signal strength, and whether or not we have an SD card installed. And on the bottom, it shows us the VMC we currently have selected, as well as the channel we're on. Hitting the sleep button puts the VMU Pro into a low power state, and then pressing it again wakes it up. The mode button, on the other hand, will bring up the menu. Here, we can use the D-pad to navigate through all the various options. Starting with the first one, we have the VMU Browser. Hitting A brings us into the browser itself, and we can see all of our virtual memory cards. Now, what I absolutely love about the VMU Pro is that when you select a VMC, it shows you all of your save files. But it does it by using the same animated save icons as if you were viewing these save files through the Dreamcast menu, which is super cool. Here, you're able to fully manage all of your save files. For example, let's say you wanted to copy a save file from one VMC to another. Select it by pressing the A button, which opens up a submenu, and then select Copy. You could also select Cut if you wanted to move the file instead of copying it. Anyway, hit the B button to back out and see all of your VMCs, and let's go into this VMC here. Select it, and then press A again, and then hit Paste. And here, you'll see that our Resident Evil save file will appear, and it means it's copied over. Now, if we open the submenu again, we can see several other options to choose from. There's serial transfer, which isn't working just yet, but basically allows you to transfer games via the connector on top. This, of course, will work on regular VMUs, as well as another VMU Pro. Below that is beam transfer. This is going to be a function that allows you to wirelessly transfer files to another VMU Pro. This obviously won't work with a regular VMU. Again, this is a feature that's also still in the works, so I won't be able to show you how it works. And at the bottom, we have delete, which does just that. But again, mine gives me an error, so there's still quite a few bugs that need to be ironed out. Now at the top of this submenu, we have another option called eVMU, or Emulated VMU. This brings up our VMC that we're currently in into the actual original VMU environment, and it uses a real VMU BIOS to do this, which is of course something you'll need to provide on your own for obvious reasons. This is a pretty cool feature that allows you to use your VMU Pro as pretty much a regular VMU device. Alright, so that's pretty much the VMU browser in a nutshell. A really powerful and intuitive way to manage all your VMCs and save data, and I love how it can all be done locally on the device without the need of using the WebUI interface like we do with the other MemCard Pro devices. Now moving on to the next menu item, we have games. This is probably the most exciting option here, so let's skip over it for now as I do want to dive a bit deeper into this feature a little bit later on in the video. So the following menu page is for the device settings. All these are pretty self-explanatory. Here we can adjust the volume, which goes all the way up to 10, and it also has a mute function. Next is the screen brightness, of which we have 10 levels. And the next three options are basically our power settings, allowing us to control when the VMU Pro display dims, turns off, or when the device goes into sleep mode. Basically, you can set these in increments of several minutes or turn them off completely if you want. You're also able to swap the A and B button to choose which one you want to be the main selector button. And the last option is a factory reset. Now here we also have the eVMU settings. This is actually really cool in that it allows you to adjust a few settings such as scaling. The default is set to 5x integer scaling, which fills the entire screen perfectly. Then there's other options like the pixel grid mode, having the VMU use the same time you have set for the VMU Pro, and some others. In a later version of the firmware, 8-bit mods will also add the ability to change the LCD color. So I'm sure a lot of this will be updated quite a bit by the time it's released. And the only remaining menu items is the music player, which isn't working just yet, but I'm told will have the ability to play MP3s and use the ESP32's Bluetooth capability to pair wireless headphones. I honestly think it would be pretty neat to be able to use the VMU Pro as a music player. And the last menu item is for powering the unit off. Pretty simple. But okay, now let's go back to the games menu. As of right now, the firmware I'm running only supports 4 emulators: the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Sega Master System, and Sega Game Gear. I'm told by 8-bit mods that there should be an NES emulator on there as well by the time it's released, so this is just a great cadre of 8-bit consoles, which is about the limits of what the VMU Pro can support. Now, I tried each of these, and I have to say they all work pretty darn near perfect. Even the sound is spot on. I'll showcase some footage now for each of the consoles. Here's the original Game Boy. I'm playing Kirby's Dream Land, and honestly, it works fantastic. If you press the bottom left button, it opens the options menu, which lets us change a few things. There's save states, which is pretty convenient, and then there's options to change the brightness, the volume, the palette, and scaling. So for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, in order to fit the screen, you do need to scale it at 1.5 times, which unfortunately isn't a perfect integer scale. But honestly, for a device like this, it's more than adequate, and I'm perfectly happy with it. Doing a native 1:1 pixel scaling results in a much smaller image. While it's technically playable, it's definitely not something I want to game on for an extended period of time. The 1.5 scaled image does result in pixels that aren't uniform, and there is a bit of shimmering when the screen scrolls from left to right and vice versa. Again, for this particular application where its primary purpose isn't an emulation handheld, this is perfectly fine. Now, another thing that's noteworthy is that the audio for each of these emulators is actually quite good. There's really no distortion or crackling that I could notice. Now, both the Game Gear and Sega Master System emulators have a FPS readout, and it appears as though they do maintain 60 frames per second. And I have to say that the games run very fluidly. Now, my videos are shot in 24 frames per second, so you really can't see how these are actually running, but it is definitely very smooth in person. Out of all the emulators, the Sega Master System looks the best. Since its native resolution is higher than the other consoles, the image quality is tack sharp and simply looks fantastic. This is the only console out of the 4 that doesn't need to be scaled. Overall, I have to say that the gaming experience on the device is really well done. And while yes, the form factor is super small and not the most comfortable, I love that 8-Bit Mods is including this feature into their VMU Pro, as it really just elevates it to that S-tier status. Now, the last feature I'll briefly touch upon, since it's currently under development, is the WebUI. Just like the other MemCard Pro devices, you can of course manage your save files and settings through the 8-Bit Mods WebUI interface. They are currently in the process of updating their WebUI platform across all MemCard Pro devices from this to something like this. This is just a sample page and isn't functional, but it's definitely getting a nice facelift with apparently game art support, and overall looks more modern. Okay, so that's pretty much all the features on the VMU Pro that I can show you for the time being, but now let's see how it performs at its core function, being used as a memory card. So with the VMU inserted into the controller and powering on the console, we can see that the screen flips 180 degrees so that it's properly oriented, and we're launched into the VMU viewer. Now, in my particular case, I have a GDEMU installed in my Dreamcast, which does have 100% Game ID support. So let's go ahead and select Resident Evil 2. And as you can see, we'll get switched over to our dedicated Resident Evil 2 VMC. If you don't have an existing VMC for a particular game, the VMU Pro will make one for you automatically, just like any other MemCard Pro device. Now, according to 8-Bit Mods, Game ID also works for Dreamcasts with the GD-ROM drive installed, as well as those that have a mode installed. Support isn't 100% for these configurations, but closer to 80%, according to 8-Bit Mods. Now, saving and loading games works exactly as you would expect, with these buttons here giving us the ability to toggle through each of the channels for the currently selected VMC. This feature is still currently being developed, which is why these buttons don't do anything at the moment. Now, typically, this would be the part where we discuss the pros and cons, but since this is an extremely early look at the VMU Pro, and the fact that I have a pre-production unit, it won't really make that much sense, since I expect pretty much all aspects of this device to improve quite a bit by the time it's released. And speaking of which, I'm sure many of you are curious when that will be. Well, pre-orders open for the VMU Pro on May 15th, so for those of you who pre-ordered it then, you can expect delivery by November of this year. Now, as more pre-orders are made and the November batch is maxed out, subsequent pre-orders will move into the next month, and so on. So definitely check the 8-Bit Mods website for the delivery date you can expect, which as of the making of this video is still November. And as for price, it will retail for $81.24, which does not include shipping, and I'm told it will be in the neighborhood of $15 to the US. Do note that these are shipped out of the UK. It does look like they're offering quite a few colors as well. They did send over some of their samples here, but did let me know that these are likely to be tweaked somewhat as they're trying to dial in the colors to match the original Dreamcast VMU offerings. Now, I know it's a bit early to talk about the future of the VMU Pro, especially since it even hasn't been released yet, but Thanos from 8-Bit Mods told me there are some really cool ideas floating around that could materialize for the device a little bit later after it's launched. First is that they're thinking of releasing an SDK to the public for people who want to make their own games or apps for the VMU. I really do think it's going to be interesting to see what the community comes up with. I was also told that some accessories could be developed for the VMU Pro, like a camera add-on to convert it to a fun little digital camera. What features or accessories would you like to see for the VMU Pro? Definitely let me know down below in the comments. Anyway guys, I have to say I'm really excited to see the incredible progress 8-Bit Mods has been making with their VMU Pro, and if their previous MemCard Pro devices are anything to go by, I know this is going to be a killer product that every Dreamcast fan will want to own. Well, there you have it, an exclusive first look at 8-Bit Mods VMU Pro. What do you guys think of it? And what features do you want to see make it into the final production version? Let me know down below in the comments. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I really think you'll like this one here, so check it out. And as always, thank you all so much for tuning in today, and I'll catch you again next time.